Gyms and gym leaders are an absolute pillar of the Pokémon games. Traveling from town to town collecting gym badges is basically the reason the player starts their journey in the first place, and is arguably the biggest part of the games themselves. However, not all gyms are created equal, and some have been considered that didn't actually make the final games, which is why today we are going to be talking about 5 Pokémon gyms that were cut. Much like many other things in Pokémon, these gyms were likely considered and planned at one point for their respective games before they were scrapped for one reason or another, and we're going to go into detail today on what they were and why they might have been cut. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. How about we start with the case of a possible cut gym in Jubilife City. If it ever seemed weird to you that a huge city like Jubilife didn't have a gym, then that feeling was likely justified, as there is evidence to suggest that there could have been a gym planned for Jubilife City originally. According to Bulbapedia, there is an unused map within the games for a location set near the Pokétch Company headquarters in Jubilife that suggests the former existence of a gym there. Additionally, via the Cut Content website, the Cutting Room Floor, they report that a map of an additional floor of the Jubilife condominiums, oddly enough, uses gym music as its theme when inside it. Now, I can't really say why the gym music would be up in a condominium building, but all of this, combined with some circumstantial evidence, really does seem to suggest that Jubilife originally had a gym of its own. By circumstantial evidence, I mean that everything about Jubilife City, based on the trends of the franchise, says that it should have a gym. One, it is the biggest city in Sinnoh, and essentially every region's largest city in the rest of the Pokemon world has a gym, and on top of that, it's just one of those things that seems like common sense. Furthermore, it's also the third city you come to in the Sinnoh games, and typically, the third city of a region usually contains a gym, and oftentimes the first gym. So for instance, in Kanto, you start in Pallet Town, go through Viridian City, and then you hit Pewter City as the third city on your journey, which also has the first gym. Same goes for New Bark to Cherry Grove to Violet in Johto, Little Root to Oldale to Petalburg in Hoenn, New Vima to Accumula to Striaton in Unova, and so on. With all of this in consideration, especially the unused map and gym music data, I think it's highly likely a gym was in Jubilife City before something made Game Freak change their mind on it. It could have been the pacing of the game, maybe the theme of the gym didn't fit the city, who knows, but it's interesting to think about how things could have been different if this had been included in Diamond and Pearl. For the absolute longest time until Sword and Shield released, people were clamoring for a Dark-type gym, and many wondered why we went so long without having one. Well, believe it or not, it's actually very possible we were intended to have a Dark-type gym right away in Generation 2 when the Dark-type was introduced. Amongst the data of the Gold and Silver Beta demo that was leaked a couple years ago, there are 8 distinct characters with their own individual names who have the Gym Leader title attached to them, likely meaning that these were the gym leaders at the time of the demo's creation. Some of them, like Falkner, Bugsy, and Morty, obviously made the final games, but there are a couple who didn't, and one of them goes by the name of Okera. Now, this part is where it does get speculative, but due to the name Okera most likely originating from Shokera, a demon-like yokai, it's very possible that this character was the leader of a Dark-type gym. Further supporting this idea is the fact that it would just make sense to have a Dark-type gym in the games where the Dark-type debuted. In fact, Jasmine, the Steel-type leader, was also amongst this list of characters in the demo, and since the Steel-type also debuted in Gen 2, it seems likely that they were going to represent both new types with gyms originally. However, plans were changed and we did not in fact receive a Dark-type gym in Johto, but instead we got a Dark-type Elite Four member, Karen, who was actually not present in the demo, giving even more weight weight to this idea's likelihood. It's probably the case that they simply wanted to balance out the representation of the new types by giving one to the gym leaders and one to the Elite Four, just to even things out a little. And as an added bonus to this entry, there are also two other likely gym leaders on this list that didn't make the final games, and their names are Gamma and Blue. That might turn your attention to Blue, aka Gary, but you have to remember that Blue is his name only in the West, and it is green in Japan. Because of this, as well as this character apparently having an overworld sprite that matches Red's once again according to the cutting room floor, they speculate that it actually could have been Red. The Gamma character, meanwhile, just based on the name, you would think maybe could have been an electric or even steel-type gym leader, but as it turns out, Gamma in Japanese is a word meaning toad, so those options probably aren't the case after all. I actually somehow missed these guys when I made my video on every cut human character in Pokémon a couple weeks ago, so I'm glad I actually ended up getting to cover them here, and if their gyms had actually made the final games, I'm sure they would have made for an exciting experience. One that I have brought up a couple times before is the idea of gyms being in Pokémon Sun and Moon. Unlike the previous two entries, there isn't any data in the games or anything like that that says we were going to have gyms in Alola originally. However, there was an admission made by Shigeru Omori, director of Pokemon Sun and Moon, that highly suggests that gyms were the plan up until a certain point in Sun and Moon's development. In an interview with Game Informer, Omori says that the island trials weren't really locked down as a feature until the main debugging phase of development, and as such had to be created solely by the designers themselves without the help of people like programmers or the art team. The fact that Trials came into the picture this late into development absolutely implies that something had to have been in their place originally, and seeing as how Trials replaced gyms as a concept in Sun and Moon, it's likely that gyms would have actually been developed into the games as well. The gym leaders themselves were more than likely just the trial captains that were repurposed into their new role, but to think that this whole huge system that defines the Sun and Moon games came in so last second and more than likely replaced traditional gyms that were already in place at the time has me thinking about what Sun and Moon would have been like with regular gyms and how much better the games could have possibly been, as many people were turned off by the atypical Trials system. Next is literally the very first gym that was cut because it was originally going to be the first gym you faced in the first Pokemon games before it was scrapped altogether. That's right, I'm talking about the original Viridian City gym that wasn't a hiding place for the Team Rocket boss Giovanni, but rather was more than likely the humble training grounds of the first gym leader you would have come across in Red and Blue. To give you guys some context as to what I'm talking about though, a few years ago, Sugimori shared some early concept art of the Kanto gym leaders on Twitter that included a cut gym leader labeled with a 1 below him, indicating that he was to be the first gym leader in Kanto's lineup instead of Brock. This, combined with the fact that the first gym you physically come across in Red and Blue is the Viridian Gym, and it paints a picture that Viridian was most likely going to be the site of your first gym encounter, with this younger looking character being your challenger instead of Giovanni. He seems like he could have been cut due to being too plain, or maybe they just decided they wanted to switch up the pacing with Viridian as the last gym instead, but if this gym actually had been the first, it makes you think about what type it would have been, where the 8th gym would have ended up instead, and whether or not Giovanni would have still been a part of it. As we have been illustrating in this video, there are so many ways that the Pokemon games could have been so vastly different, and it's something that I personally enjoy learning about to no end. And as if the Viridian Gym hadn't gone through enough development already, there's also the fact that before it was a ground-type gym, it was ironically the exact opposite as a flying-type gym. As I mentioned in my recent video covering facts on all of the gym leaders, data retrieved from the beta of Pokemon Red and Green and published by Helix Chamber last year revealed that Giovanni at one point was a flying type trainer instead of a ground one. This would explain why the Earth badge looks so much like a feather, and it even explains why over time, its design subtly changed to attempt to look more like some kind of leaf type thing, which, knowing what we know now, would obviously be to coincide with Giovanni's final ground type more instead of his former flying type. It's crazy to think about how much refinement the Viridian Gym went through. It likely went through 3 different type specialties that we know of, and its fate could have had big implications on not only the plot of the Gen 1 games, but the future of Pokemon too. If Giovanni had remained a flying type gym leader, it's likely that the very first gym leader in the next games, Falkner, wouldn't have been one, and therefore his character as possibly a ground type gym leader or otherwise would have been massively different. It would have all likely caused a domino effect that could have changed the entire landscape of the Pokemon franchise as we know it. We knew before that the Viridian Gym was a big deal since it's the last one you face, and the leader is the leader of Team Rocket, and it eventually gets passed down to your rival, but who'd have thought that it would have had this much backstory? People always bag on Kanto for being plain and boring, but the more time goes by, the more we learn that it has a heck of a lot more to offer than meets the eye. Well, thank you all so much for watching my video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you subscribe if you're new as well for more Pokemon content all the time, and you can also check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify and my Pokemon Cardinal project if you'd like to support the channel more. Anyways, I will have another video for you guys on Saturday, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can know when it goes live, and until then, as always, I love you all, stay safe, and I will smell you guys later.